Hello everyone and welcome to Tech Fix Flicks. In this tutorial we will perform a full installation or reinstallation of Windows 10. This video is the fourth in a 5-part series and contains a step-by-step guide to the Windows installation process. Before performing the steps in this video, it's recommended that you watch the 3 tutorials previously posted on this channel, describing the implications of and alternatives to reinstallation and pre-installation steps. If this is your first installation or reinstallation, you should watch both of these videos before returning here. The 5th tutorial, which concludes this series, will look at the steps immediately following the installation. This tutorial assumes that you are fully prepared for installation and have inserted your installation media into your device. And if your memory stick or disk has been properly detected, you will see this screen. Note that this is the only screen you want to see. If your existing version of Windows appears, or you see an error message, you'll need to return to the pre-installation steps tutorial to make sure that you get to this screen. Remember that, in normal circumstances, your machine starts by loading Windows from the primary storage device, typically your main hard drive or solid-state drive. In this installation, we will be telling the computer not to load Windows as normal, because we will be overwriting the existing installation, and instead we want to run the setup program on your USB stick or DVD, so the key is to set your startup sequence in BIOS to read from the stick or disk before your main hard drive. The pre-installation steps tutorial will show you how to set up BIOS to start in this way. Notice that a series of dots spin in a circle in the lower part of the screen to indicate activity. When loading is complete, the screen will automatically transition to the first setup screen. You'll need a mouse or other pointing device to progress through these steps, so check that it's connected and responding by moving it and checking that the on-screen pointer follows your movements. If it doesn't, particularly in a new hardware setup, check that the device is plugged in. Throughout this tutorial, all clicks are performed with the left mouse button. There are 3 drop-down boxes here, activated by clicking the small grey downward pointing triangles on the right of each of the white boxes. These options are particularly important to ensure that your language, time, currency and keyboard match your local language. UK users should be particularly careful to ensure that you select United Kingdom options rather than their United States equivalent, as many users inadvertently later discover their keyboards produce incorrect characters because they have selected a US layout. This can be corrected after installation if necessary. Clicking Next advances to the Install Now screen. Note that, other than installing now, you also have the option to repair your computer. The tutorial Alternatives to Reinstallation covered repair options, so at this screen your only option is to click Install Now. There is a brief pause as setup commences. This is your first opportunity to enter your 25-digit product key. We covered locating this key in the pre-installation steps tutorial, and you can simply type it in the box. If your keyboard doesn't respond, make sure it's plugged in. As an alternative measure, you can also activate an on-screen keyboard by clicking the keyboard icon to the right of the text box. At this stage, you do not have to enter a key and can click I don't have a product key to defer key entry to a later date. If you haven't entered a key, you will reach this screen. You need to select the version of Windows 10 which matches the license you own. There are 2 factors to consider here. Firstly, the operating system must match your software license. You are most likely to own a Home or Pro license, as the Education, Single license and N versions are less common in typical user setups. Check your Windows packaging, keycard, sticker, disk or receipt to determine your appropriate version. You can also obtain these details from your previous installation before continuing with this installation by following the guide in the pre-installation steps tutorial. Secondly, the architecture will be either x64 for 64-bit systems or x86 for 32-bit systems. Again, you need to select the correct version for your license, as these are fundamentally different, and again, the pre-installation steps tutorial covers this. Having checked the license, select your chosen version by clicking on it. It will be highlighted as shown. Then click Next to proceed. You will then be presented with a copy of the software license terms. You will advance directly to this screen if you have entered a license code. Your agreement is required to proceed, and you indicate this by clicking on the small box to the left of I accept the license terms. Of course, you should also very carefully read every word of the small print so that you know exactly what you are signing up to, because everyone does that before agreeing. You now have a choice of installation types. We aren't performing an upgrade in this instance, so our focus will be upon custom. There is a timely warning here to ensure that all data from the previous installation is backed up to an external drive. Your next screen may or may not resemble this one. In this example, we have a single drive of 50 GB in size with 50 GB free. With only one drive to select, simply click Next to proceed to the next stage. Here we have an alternative scenario with one drive, two partitions, and varying total and used capacities. This scenario is more typical in a reinstallation where the remnants of the previous operating system are still evident. There are clues as to which drive you should select. Specifically, the system reserved marker indicates that this is not the drive to use, and its capacity is only 549 megabytes, which is much too small for a modern Windows installation, which typically requires storage space upwards of 20 gigabytes. Any value expressed in megabytes is too small by default. You may have even more drives or partitions in your installation, so it's worth checking the capacity of the drive you intend to use prior to installation. Selecting a partition which has been used for a previous version of Windows generates an error message, reminding you that you will no longer be able to use that old operating system. You may wish to entirely reformat the partition to remove all traces of previous operating systems. Click Format to erase the partition. Windows warns that this is a significant partition. Once you have clicked OK here, all remnants of the previous Windows installation will be permanently erased. Note that Partition 2 has all but 0.1 GB of its capacity free to receive the new installation. Select this partition and click Next. You can now take a break, as the next process will be time-consuming. Incidentally, this video is edited to match the narration, and it does not play in real time. The real-time speed of the operation is determined by a number of factors, including processor, hard drive, and source drive speeds. The installer will systematically proceed through each of the 5 categories, indicating percentage completion and ticking off finalized items. Windows will restart automatically, or you can save up to 10 seconds by clicking on Restart Now. Don't be tempted to misinterpret this screen as an instruction to press a key. You are now back to booting from the main drive as normal, so pressing a key here would trigger your installation media and send you back to the start of the installation process. Instead, you should simply wait for the installation to continue in its own time. Again, you may see a number of messages and circling dots as the installation progresses. Now we reach a new phase of the installation. If you haven't performed an installation recently, you may be surprised that this Cortana-powered phase both speaks to you and listens for your responses. For this function to operate as intended, you'll need either headphones or speakers to hear Cortana, and a microphone to verbally respond. You can also continue with a keyboard and mouse if this is your preference, or you don't have the audio equipment available. The region has been correctly identified, although you can modify this either through spoken response or using the mouse. Click or say yes to continue. Here, we're asked to confirm the keyboard layout, which seems like a repetition of the selection made earlier. Click or say yes to continue. Thoughtfully, you can add a second keyboard layout if you wish. We'll skip that in this instance, as the vast majority of users opt for a single keyboard layout. Now we progress to the personalisation of the setup. As this tutorial is aimed at home or personal users, we'll follow the path of setting up for personal use by selecting this option and clicking Next. There are effectively 3 pathways through this option. If you have an existing Microsoft ID from either a previous installation or from another device, you can sign in with your details here. If you are selecting this option, you are presumably aware of the features associated with a Microsoft account. If you don't have a Microsoft account and would like one, you can click Create Account. A Microsoft account will be the option for you if you'd like to synchronize user information and preferences across multiple devices which you control. If you'd prefer to set up a local account, click on Offline Account. An offline account is unique to this device and does not synchronize across the internet. This will be the option for you if your preference is for privacy. Let's explore the account creation process, beginning with the offline account, followed by the Microsoft account. So select Offline Account and click Next. Note that the following screen is entirely dedicated to guiding you toward the alternative option of creating a Microsoft account, highlighting the services offered. If you're still unconvinced, don't forget that you need to click No here, because you are declining the option offered. The theme of Microsoft's preference for you to use an online account is referenced in the lower corner of this screen, but, by this juncture, you are well on the way to creating a local account. So type in your preferred username here. This can be whatever your preferred name is. Click Next to advance. Time to enter a master password of your choosing. Be sure to watch the tutorial on password security for some suggestions for better passwords. Here, the password is extremely long. Many hacking tools systematically check all possible character combinations, so, at this point in time, password length is an important defense. Of course, if your password is as long as this one, there is a significant risk of failing to enter it correctly next time, so your password may well be shorter. To ensure that you really mean to set this password, you need to type it a second time. Any discrepancies between the two will force you to repeat the process to ensure that you end up with the password you intend. You are now asked to select 3 question and answer pairs to provide a means to reset your password in the event that you are unable to recall it in future. Clicking on Security Question 1 of 3 highlights 6 potential questions. You will need to use 3 of these in total. Yep, I loved that parrot. This process now repeats for questions 2 and 3. Obviously the pool of 6 questions reduces to 5 and 4 respectively, with each completed question-answer pair. That concludes the setup process for an offline account. Now we will rewind time and opt instead to follow Microsoft's preference to set up an online account. Returning to this screen, click Create Account. At this juncture, you can either enter an existing email address or create a brand new email account ending at outlook.com. We will go for the full experience and create a new account. Now, choose the name which you would like to appear in your email address. The @outlook.com suffix cannot be altered, and obviously many name combinations will be unavailable because they have been taken by existing users. With the account named, click Next to proceed. The same advice given earlier in relation to passwords applies here. And again, this password is extremely long. Now we will need to select a country of residence and a date of birth using the drop-down menus. Incidentally, we tried skipping on date of birth, but the installer will not permit this. However, Microsoft isn't the government, and if you are truly privacy focused, there's no reason for you to be entirely truthful here. Pro tip, at the date of birth entry screen, there is a small tick at the bottom which is easily missed. You need to click this before clicking Next. Now we are asked to add security information. If you prefer to keep your telephone number private, you may wish to add an alternative email address if you have one. An upcoming tutorial shows you the account creation process for the leading mail services including Gmail and Yahoo, should you wish to set up a secondary account. Here, we've used a Gmail account created for that tutorial as a secondary email address. This secondary address will be invaluable if the newly created Outlook account needs to be reset. At the next screen, you will see 2 privacy options, one of which is pre-ticked for you. This first option allows Microsoft Advertising to access your personal information, whilst the second allows Microsoft to send marketing materials. Both options can be reversed at a later date. However, it's hard to make a case for either of these options being to your advantage, so the recommendation here is to ensure that both boxes are unticked before proceeding. Clicking Next advances to a pin screen. Note that there is no skip option here, and you will find that Windows will default to pin entry upon subsequent uses, so you should note the pin you create. You are not restricted to simply numbers here, as ticking the lower box allows for the inclusion of letters and symbols. Furthermore, you are not restricted to a typical 4-digit pin, and yours can be longer, as exemplified by this 8-character pin. As before, you will need to enter it twice to ensure accuracy, and the installer will ask you to correct any discrepancies. Should you wish, you can link your phone with your device. For brevity, we will opt to do this later, if at all. Finally, in this section, you can set up OneDrive functionality to back up and share files between devices. This will come in useful, so we'll click Next to enable this, although note you can opt for local storage by only saving files to the current device by clicking on the option to the lower left. Whether you've chosen to sign in with an offline account or a Microsoft account, you will eventually arrive at this screen. This section of the installer is powered by Cortana. Using Cortana represents a trade between convenience and access to your personal data, so you should give considerable thought as to how your data is used. Microsoft is very open about this, but access to your information is considerable. This really is a personal choice for you and beyond the scope of this tutorial. If you want to use the classic Hey Cortana spoken command, tick the box on the left before proceeding. The next choice is relatively straightforward, although you do have to click on your desired option prior to clicking Next. If you find speech recognition useful, this is the option for you. Location-based services is another trade between disclosure of your information, in this instance your physical whereabouts, for services that may be of local relevance. Again, select your preferred option before clicking Accept. Find My Device tracks the location of your device, although it's only accessible if you logged into or created a Microsoft account earlier in the setup process. This could be very useful in the event of loss or theft, so any location data conceded here is likely to be worthwhile. Once again, select your preferred option before clicking Accept. In the next screen, you are obligated to send diagnostic data to Microsoft in one form or another, and there is not an option to send no data. Working on the principle that the less data you give away the better, and that there is no direct benefit to you, selecting Basic offers you the greatest amount of data security. Only select Full if you're happy for the details of every website you visit to be available to Microsoft. Once you've selected your choice, click Accept. The inking option again seems intrusive and potentially sends everything you type to Microsoft. This seems rather excessive, and the benefits to you seem minimal in relation to the concession of your data. In this instance, we will select No before progressing. Tailored experiences effectively relates to the way Microsoft advertises to you. Whilst the best advertising is no advertising at all, it's probably better to have advertising which is of some interest to you rather than entirely generic ads. Opting for Yes here and clicking Accept to proceed. The advertising ID again allows advertisers to target you specifically based on profiles assembled from the information collected about you. To reiterate the previous thoughts, the best advertising is no advertising at all, but if that isn't an option, it's preferable to have advertising based on your interests rather than irrelevant products. Opting for Yes again here and clicking Accept to proceed. That concludes this section of the installation, and we are now close to completion. A number of screens will display, which essentially keep you entertained as the setup concludes. Here is another. You can probably take a short break as there are no user inputs required for a few minutes. And finally, success. We have reached the Windows desktop. You will note that a Microsoft Edge window has launched, showing a welcome page. The installation has immediately generated a message in relation to searching for a display driver, and that will be addressed in the next tutorial. You may see a number of message boxes dependent upon your hardware configuration and services. Once the message clears, You can also close the browser window by clicking the close icon in the top right. Congratulations, you have performed a clean installation of Windows 10. But this is merely the beginning of the journey. In the concluding part 5 of this tutorial series, we will go through the first steps to be taken immediately following a successful installation, specifically connecting to the internet, performing system updates, and updating Windows Store apps, as well as making cosmetic changes to the Windows desktop. Thank you for watching this tutorial. Hopefully you found it useful. If you'd like more, you are very welcome to subscribe to the TechFixFlix YouTube channel by clicking on the subscribe button. Subscription is, of course, entirely free and provides easy access to all of the videos posted here. Clicking on the neighbouring bell icon means you will be notified whenever a new video is posted. Until your next Tech Fix, goodbye.